Composure versus Exposure, Part 2. And this one is a little bit more personal, might be a little uncomfortable for me, but we got to speak to it. So in the first video of Composure versus Exposure, and what I'm going to try to do is put a tag, I believe, right about here, and it should pop up where it will say, or maybe it's on this side, where it's going to say Composure versus Exposure. You can click those, and it'll take you to that video. But anyways, what I spoke to was being at work and saying I wasn't in the mind or the place to be at work in that moment. And so I left about an hour into the shift. And my point to that was basically saying it's, in my estimation, it's better to leave something and have that speak for you rather than stay and have a bad showing. And now you have to not only have that speak for you, but you may have to explain yourself for it as well. So that was the first video. Part 2 was at my girlfriend's house last night. And from the moment we walked in, there was a little bit of a kind of weird energy. We'd been hitting some ups and downs recently. But at one point, I just said, I'm going to go. I wasn't feeling whatever was going on. I did think that it was a good place to be. And I ended up staying, and that was to not just my detriment, our detriment, her detriment, my detriment, and our detriment. And the reason I say that is because I should have excused myself, because what I did not do by staying was show composure, and therefore the exposure was that we were both working in a very elevated and emotional state, and that did not work out well. It wasn't the worst thing, so I just want to put everybody's minds at ease. Everybody's okay. You know, we got some hurt feelings. You never know how these things will play out in the long run. But the problem is when you put enough of those milestone moments into your relationship, you may milestone your way out of a relationship. So it really is important to have the thought, the emotional intelligence, and sometimes we're lacking because we're invested in a different way. Let me grab a sip of water. And because we're invested in a different way, we react differently than we would, say, at work. Why is that? In my estimation, it's because at work, we don't necessarily want to be at work. There's a few of us who really, who really do enjoy what you do and you don't mind going to work. But if we were all independently wealthy or we didn't have to work, most of us would not. And the balance to that is we more often than not want to be around people we love and care for and people who love and care for us. So it's easier to want to stay at said girlfriend's house, and even if it's a contentious moment, rather than be at work where I didn't want to be to begin with. So that can be a hard place to navigate. It can be a hard place to navigate because if you feel like, okay, well, if I leave now it's going to upset them worse, and now I got something worse to deal with. But no, you really don't. It's better, again, that you leave if that's the case, and let your absence speak less than staying, which is what I did, and now having other things to not only speak for my presence, but then it's speaking in my absence now, and there's still things to explain because we had an exchange of words and, again, heightened emotion where it wasn't our best moment. So what do we always hear? I was looking for a job when I found this one. Most of the time we don't say I was looking for a girlfriend when I found this one, or I was looking for a boyfriend when I found that one. That's the difference. Money definitely at our jobs is important. It's necessary to pay our bills and sustain our life, but we're human. We've been humans and having emotions and feelings long before currency became a thing as far as sustainability. So we are very invested here. And that's where the emotions can run raw sometimes. And that's where we can get ourselves into these pickles where we know, like, okay, being here isn't the best thing, but then we stay anyways. And then you have an exchange that didn't necessarily have to happen. But I will say that sometimes the lack of composure, this is a minute area, the lack of composure will bring out the exposure And then you get people saying things that they had kind of been harboring. What do we do sometimes? We've done it, and we've had somebody do it to us where you think that you're getting one complaint lodged against you, and there's like 15, 20 of them. Why? Because they were stockpiling, maybe not on purpose, but they were just kind of keeping it. But this is where transparency and honesty in real time matters. So that way we can speak to those things and be able to say, not exactly a fan of that, or I'm not feeling that, or hey, when you did that, that way we can correct it in real time. But I understand where a lot of times people feel like, well, if I say too much or if I hear too much, I'm going to feel like they're always picking on me or I'm always picking on them. Well, maybe it's in how you put it then. Maybe it's in how you're communicating the message, but it's fair to that person, more fair for them to hear these things one at a time rather than to hear 20 of them at one time. So because we stockpile certain things, that exposes us through lack of composure. And maybe that's a good thing in some doses because it gets another conversation started that if we really buckle down and look at it, with care and understanding and empathy, we can say, when you're upset, you said, two or three extra things. What is it about those? Let's talk about those things as well. And then you have a chance to build some things up rather than having to rebuild with just a bunch of rubble because things really just fell apart. So I think that there's a yin and yang about that, composure versus exposure, but sometimes the exposure due to lack of composure might just be able to benefit if we know how to navigate and understand and identify what that means and what it potentially can do for us in being able to say, let's have a talk about these things that you mentioned along with, what I thought was just the only complaint. Or only concern. Sometimes, again, complaint, concern, the wording matters. So if you say complaint to somebody, well, I wasn't complaining, da da da. But if you say your concerns, well, maybe they're going to, be able to feel like they can say that and they're not under attack. So sometimes the selection of wording just matters, matters those little bits. So we've all been there. If we've had relationships of any standing, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have been, where we've stayed in a moment where we shouldn't have, and again, comparatively to work, where we're just like, I'm out of here or I'm calling in, don't feel good today, and then you're off to the races. So a lot of times we have to look at those and kind of weigh them in the wants versus needs. And again, one of these places is going to have a tab to the wants versus needs. Guys, you can also see the video selections at the end of the video. You can click on those boxes. But wants versus needs also kind of plays into that as well. I wanted to stay there, but I needed to leave and I didn't. So that was my mistake. That was where I failed. First attempt in learning. Again, maybe another pop up. But that's where my failure really guided the course of the night and again to this point. So I don't want to ever sit here and just give you guys a whole bunch of advice and look like I sit on the top of a mountain and there's nothing that goes wrong in my existence and I just think of these things. These things that I talk about are derived from real life circumstances. And what I want to be able to do is be able to share these things with you guys and without giving a whole bunch of details out and on some of these things, but still being able to say, I mess up all the time. And I try to learn and grow from it as often as I make those mistakes because there's a lesson in everything. And so by me sharing it, one, again, it doesn't, I don't want people to think like I feel like I'm, just talking down to people. No, this is how I also reach out and ask for your help, your ace up the sleeve, advice, comment, experience. So leaving it in the chat really matters because I read these things and I can take these to heart and learn lessons from people who have done it differently than me, better than me, worse than me, and had a great experience as far as how they learned doing it better or worse. You just never know. So please impart your wisdom, and I hope that this is a fair exchange and you're gaining something from me. Boy, it's tough and sometimes it hurts, but we will grow and we will learn from these things. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I won't be mad at you either way, but I will say that the thumbs up and thumbs down, they do help the channel growth and progression. So it helps. You're here, please click one or the other. I won't be mad at you for the thumbs down. Subscriptions to the channel are free in this economy. That's a great thing. Share it with your friends because they deserve free stuff too. And I hope this finds everybody in your place, pursuit, or beginnings of total health, mind, body, and soul. Peace, love, unity, solidarity.